of this fiscal year. So, as we come to the end of the year, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited. We're going to talk about networking today. But just to get things started a little bit, we want to know who's graduating high school this coming spring and what college are you going to, or what are you planning to do after graduation? And what classes are you excited to take? If you know, I didn't know.
I can go ahead and start with my answer since I'll be graduating high school this year. So next year I'll be attending UT Austin, Hookham, and I will be studying public health. I'm really excited to take my intro to public health class. I'll be on pre-med track, so I'm excited to take, as weird as it sounds, general and organic chemistry. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be hard, and I'm ready for the challenge. I'm excited to take that, and I'm also excited to possibly take more human rights and social justice classes to hopefully get a certification in human rights and social justice. So that's exciting. Really excited for college. Caitlin, are you graduating from college this year?
No, I have another year. But I remember as a freshman coming in, so I'm an engineering major, but one of my favorite classes was world religion. So yeah, like you said, just getting more versed, and it's very interesting. Steve is tuning in and he's going to Northeastern to study biology on the pre-med track. So maybe you guys can work on organic chemistry homework together, because I know I did not like it.
Steven, hit me up. We'll work on organic chem together. Let's do it. But yeah, pre-med, let's go. We're in for the long run. Anyone else? Is anyone else graduating? Northeastern, that's a great school.
Make sure they have a Unicef club.
Yeah, and start a Unicef club if it isn't there, because hey, continue those things that you set forth in high school. I'm definitely going to be joining my Unicef club at UT, and I'm excited to do that.
They have one. Great.
Oh, they do have one. Yay! Go, Steven. You can join that, and then you can connect with us, and we can talk about, UNICEF and pre-med and how difficult it's going to be, but how fun it's going to be.
You guys will do fine.
Anna's also graduating. She is going to start one at her college. That's amazing, Anna. Good job.
Where are you going to college, Anna?
Let's see what she says.
She's going to start her own college too. Just kidding. So we will go ahead and move on to the next question. So we want to know who has filled out their end of the year survey. Because if not, Anna's going to Washington and Lee University. Yay.
That's a cool school.
We want to know who's filled out the end of the year survey. And if you haven't, when are you going to do that? And hopefully the answer is soon.
Yeah, I just finished filling out my end of the year survey and graduating seniors. And guess what? You'll get cords, and they're really cute. They're Unicef signed blue, so they're like this shirt, and they're gonna look so amazing on your gown. And I think I'm excited to wear it, and I'm excited to show it off to like my friends. Be like, look at my Unicef blue cord.
Get those cords, guys. Yeah, we have those for college too. Super exciting. And in the chat is a little link to the end of the year survey. So if you haven't done it yet, click it, send it around, have your club fill it out. It's great. It's great data for us. And Matt has done it. Yay. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, and also I think Diana's done it, and Emily. So good job. Diana's also going to New Jersey City University for political science. That's cool. That's an interesting major. I would do that if I wasn't doing pre-med and public health. That is like amazing. Love it. Love it, Diana. And Stephen has also completed his end of year survey. Great. Love it. You'll get your UNICEF cyan blue cord soon. And again, if you haven't filled out the survey, fill it out fast, because supplies are going to run out fast. Get it. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next question. Since today's session is all about networking, tell us what is one thing you like about networking, and then tell us what is one thing that you struggle with networking. Caitlin, do you struggle with anything? What do you like about networking?
Okay, so I love how many doors can open from networking, and I find like once you start communicating with people, it gets easier and easier, and getting to know people and making those connections is something I really like. But the initial going up to somebody or introducing myself is what I struggle with the most. So like I said, once I get going, I'm like comfortable and I like it, but then I get so nervous trying to go up to somebody. I'm just like shaking and like, oh, what do I say? So hopefully after this symposium, if you have similar little hesitations about networking, we can help you out with those because I've definitely improved over the years a little bit.
Same for me. My biggest struggle with networking is continuing that relationship afterwards. I find it hard after I network with someone, I can talk to them, but then I'm like, what do I do now? What do I do after I've finished networking with them? What about after this event? 2 months later, 3 months later, what do I do? So that is something I struggle with. Something that I enjoy about it is talking to people. If you guys don't know by now, I love to talk. I love talking to people. I enjoy it a lot. I love learning about people's stories and understanding where they come from, their background, their culture. So that is one of my favorite things about networking is just meeting new people and talking to them. I think we have Anna said me too, Caitlin. So we have someone who also does struggle with, I guess, approaching people and talking to them. Does anyone struggle with my thing? Does anyone
I
struggle
do,
with
yeah.
yeah, you do.
Because I always think about if I'm emailing too much or if I'm emailing not enough, like it's hard to find that balance.
Mhm.
Steven says, I always forget to follow up, but I like making the initial connection. So that's kind of similar to you, Ria. It's just the
Stephen, we're the
what to do
same person.
next.
We're the same person, Stephen. Yeah, no, same. I never know what to do next. And I think after the symposium, we'll really learn what to do and how we can go about it. But yeah. Is there any interesting stories you've had, Caitlin, with networking?
Um, there was one coincidental networking event that happened, which was kind of funny. This is doesn't reflect on my skills, but I walked into a wrong interview room for one of the jobs, and I ended up networking with them, the interviewees, and sparking that initial conversation. And they're like, well, you're not supposed to be here, but let's get your contact information. We'll take your resume. So that was good. I mean, it kind of took away my nerves because I wasn't expecting it, but then I was still able to like use my networking skills to still have an initial conversation. So I thought that was kind of funny. It kind of fell into my lap a little bit.
That's kind of funny. These type of mistakes I feel like is fate. And it's nice when it happens because, hey, you built on a skill and you practiced an interview without actually doing the interview.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. Diana says that she also finds it hard to keep networking with people who live far away or are in a different country. Yeah, same. I've networked with people in different states, and I always find it hard to continue to connect with them afterwards, other than connecting through social media. So I think let's go ahead and segue into the session then, because I see that a lot of you guys do have these struggles similar to me and Caitlin, and we want to learn more from this. So I do want to introduce our guest speaker, Miss Sarah. Miss Sarah is the Director of Corporate Partnerships for UNICEF USA, and she manages the new businesses for UNICEF USA. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, everybody.
So Sarah, can you tell us a little about yourself before you begin?
Yeah, sure. So, as you guys mentioned, I'm the Director of Corporate Partnership Development at UNICEF USA. And basically, my team is part of a broader team that manages our corporate partnerships, but my specific team focuses on how do we bring new partners into the fold at UNICEF. So building some really comprehensive partnerships that involve fundraising, employee engagement, workplace giving, strategic grants, and then we have some really awesome partners who are also helping us pilot some new programs at UNICEF, like Microsoft. So it's a really exciting team to be a part of and a really wonderful organization to be a part of. And then I'll just share a little bit of background on me. So before joining UNICEF, I've worked as I would call myself a fundraising professional in a number of different organizations. I started out working within arts institutions in New York City. So I worked at a few museums, which was really cool. And then I segued my career at some point into working with humanitarian organizations like UNICEF. So let's see, I went to Dickinson College as an undergrad, and I grew up in New Jersey and went to West Windsor Plainsboro High School South. Go Pirates. And yeah, I'm really excited to be talking to you guys today, and hopefully you'll have a little bit to learn from me in terms of networking, which is a super important part of the work that we do for corporate partnerships.
Great. I'm excited to learn more about networking. So throughout the presentation, go ahead and chat in your questions for Sarah. Again, she's going to be presenting on networking. So if you have any questions and they pop up, just chat them in the chat box and Ms. Sarah will answer them at the end.
Also, you are so kind to call me Miss Sarah.
No problem.
I love it. So proper. Cool. So I will just share with you guys a little bit on what I find to be the benefits of networking and why I think it's so important. I think, you guys are talking about how sometimes it's hard. There's so many people all over both the United States, but also around the world, and it can seem really daunting and intimidating. But I actually think that networking allows us to kind of find these smaller worlds within a big world. I think you'll find that through more and more networking, you'll always hear the phrase, oh, it's such a small world, because you'll realize how connected you are to other people, despite how big and massive this world can seem and how vast all of our different experiences are. I think in terms of networking and why it's so important, I think obviously from a number of different standpoints, it's really important for, finding jobs and, getting a foot in the door with positions. But I would also say it's really important in terms of building a network for yourself. So building a community for yourself that can serve not only to, help you out when you need something or a favor, but also to be a peer group to bounce ideas off of that aren't necessarily your direct coworkers or friends and whatnot. So I think that's another really, really important part of networking. And I'm really happy to say that in the number of professional experiences I have had, that I've held on to those relationships, because I recognize not only are they really nice friends that I can bounce challenges and issues off of, but they're really important resources to me to connect me to other organizations that they're connected to. So I think another thing is that I think it's a really important thing. You'll find that everybody has similar types of concerns and challenges when it comes to networking. It's really hard putting yourself out there with a complete stranger and knowing what's the right thing to say, or how do I broach this topic with this person? Maybe like, is what I have to say interesting? All of those things. But I think networking is really important in terms of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And just like you guys were saying, Caitlin and Ria, like once you get going and you start doing it, you really start to build that confidence in your ability to network with people, especially strangers. And again, I think it's just once you find that you're able to get over that hurdle of that initial conversation, you'll find it's really, really satisfying to build those connections and relationships and to hopefully turn them into something substantial and meaningful for whatever your purpose for networking was. So I think, a lot of different things I just touched upon on why it's important, not only for your career and for your professional development, but for building a community and also kind of pushing yourself as a human being. And I will tell you, I push myself to network all the time. So I've been doing my job for a really long time, and I've been working in fundraising for a really long time, and it's still really hard for me too. So you're in good company, and just know that you're always with a group of people, I think, who feel generally similar. I would call the person who loves networking a unicorn of a person. They exist, but I would say it's very few and far in between. Now, just I'll touch upon, what somebody like myself, a professional, is looking for when I'm approached by somebody your age, either in high school or in college. So perhaps you want to reach out to me to learn a little bit about my career, or perhaps you're interested in getting an internship or employment in the organization I work for. I think, there are a number of ways, obviously, you guys probably know this, that you can connect with people. LinkedIn is a wonderful resource once you're able to use LinkedIn. And then also just going through your connections and cold outreach to people. I think a lot of you will find also your universities have really great alumni networks. And a lot of the time, people like myself as an alumni of a university opt into being contacted by students to be able to help them in their journey to find employment and to also navigate different career paths. So generally speaking, since I do get a lot of outreach from people your age, things that I like to hear and know is that you're looking to learn from my experience and my professional path, and that you're not just saying, hey, I want an internship, or hey, I want a job. That you're saying, hey, Sarah, I see you've had a lot of really interesting experience. I'm interested in getting into the arts, or I'm interested in getting into humanitarian organizations, maybe get into fundraising. Would love to learn from you. How did you get there? What was your path for getting into a position like that? And, what were some of the challenges you saw? And did you know right away that that was the job that you wanted? The answer is no. But those kinds of questions, I think, are really, for me, show that this person wants to have a meaningful conversation beyond just what can I do for them. And I think that you'll find someone like myself is really eager to help and to offer both advice, but also connections, once we see that that initial connection is really authentic. I think also I'm generally interested in speaking with someone when they have an overall sense of where they want to go. I'm not saying that you need to know your 5-year or 10-year plan. I certainly don't have one of those either. But I think that you generally know, like you guys are saying, hey, I really want to get into political science, or I really want to work in engineering, et cetera, et cetera. And I think you having an initial idea of why you're connecting with me and how I might be able to help you, I think, navigate that path is a really good first step as well. It shows me you've done a little bit of your homework, and it also shows me that you're not just looking for somebody to give you career counseling, which I hope you have those services at your high school and your college. But I think really to use the limited time that you would have with someone like myself in a meaningful way is super important. And then I'd say the other part is people like myself, I think working professionals have a lot to juggle in terms of our day-to-day schedules. We are in a lot of meetings. So I would ask also that you're just super respectful of time when you're asking for a meeting or a call or a coffee. Try to make sure that there's no reason you need to cancel the call. Try to make sure you're on time. I think that really shows a lot of effort has been put into your outreach. And I think it makes, myself as a working professional who unfortunately doesn't have a whole lot of free time feel like I'm using my time in a good way with you. So super, super important. And then I would say an additional important piece is follow-up. Follow-up is so important. So, I also struggle with making sure I find the time for the proper follow-up. I would say I keep my follow-up super brief, just making sure the person knows that I'm grateful for their time. If there were any follow-up pieces, reiterating what those follow-up steps were. And then, I think just making sure that that person knows that you're thankful for their time is really important. It doesn't have to be a novel, doesn't have to be, super heavy on content. Just a simple thank you goes a really long way. And then I think initial approach. We were talking a little bit about sometimes the initial approach is really tough. I'm going to speak from my own personal perspective. I think you'll find a lot of different people will take different approaches. But when somebody is connecting with me, I want to know about them. I want you to tell me about yourself. Give me like a super brief couple of sentences about who you are, where you are in your life, and what you want to be doing. I think also, show me that you've done your homework a little bit. What is it specifically that you saw about my background that you think will be helpful? Kind of touching upon some of the points earlier. I think just try to be natural, be yourself, don't overthink it. But again, I think be on that kind of cusp of formal and informal, right? Don't don't be too casual, especially in a first email, until the other person has shown you in their reciprocated email back to you that you're welcome to be casual. So a lot of the time, somebody will start an email calling me Miss Berger. I'll write back and I'll say, great, thanks, Sarah. And I'll make sure that it becomes super familiar off the bat, because that's how I prefer to communicate. But you'll find other people prefer to communicate in a more formal sense, and that's certainly okay as well. So I would just recommend that you follow the lead of the start out formal slash, you know, start out formal and follow the lead of the person whom you're talking to, I think is always your best bet. And then in terms of what are some doors that have been opened for me that I can credit towards networking, I was racking my brain for specific examples, and it's really sad how bad my memory is. I think that just means I've just crammed so much more new and important knowledge into my brain, especially working at Unicef. But I think when it comes to the super simple stuff, my peers, I've really created, either through networking or retaining networks, a group of peers that I really know I can rely on, both as friends, but also as sounding boards. So knowing, hey, I'm having this issue with fundraising at my current organization, like having this challenge and I can't figure it out. How do you handle this at your organization? Bouncing ideas off of one another. I think with new jobs, you'll find a lot of the time having that foot in the door through a warm contact rather than doing a totally cold, resume submission and whatnot, because these organizations get so many resumes. Certainly having a connection at an organization who is able to just simply say, hey, Sarah's applying for this position. I know her through XYZ network, just wanted to pass along, she's great. You should definitely interview her, kind of thing. I think that's always a really, really great way to network and to try to get your foot in the door. My one recommendation is that I would make when asking for positions is make sure that your experience aligns with what the position is asking for, because otherwise it puts the person you're asking for a favor from in a somewhat awkward position if they maybe don't think that your skills and expertise necessarily align. And I've certainly been put in that position before and tried to kind of explain to somebody why I wasn't super comfortable passing their resume along. And then I would say in terms of like professional networking, so working in corporate partnerships specifically, we are always looking for new champions and advocates and connections for our corporate partners. So I may be working with a corporate social responsibility office, typically the folks who are managing a company's foundation or philanthropic efforts. And they're really fantastic, but we also may have a connection to one of the key decision makers at a company through, for instance, a board member at UNICEF. Through networking, through connections, we're able to help get an additional advocate for this partnership with UNICEF by asking, for instance, a board member to do us a favor and ask one of their colleagues and networks to put in a good word for UNICEF with those corporate employees. And I think also just I tap into my former networks a lot, whether it's through LinkedIn or through email addresses that I've saved in my own contacts on Gmail. I have colleagues now who I used to work with who are at these foundations, at corporations, doing the type of work that I want to connect to and bring into the fold at UNICEF. So I'm constantly reaching out to those colleagues. And I think one thing to be mindful of specifically is when I'm going to somebody who I used to work with and I haven't talked to them in a long time, I always make sure to start with something personal to try to connect with them personally and make them feel that I'm not just reaching out for a favor, but hey, I want to hear, how's your family doing? How was that conference that you went to? I saw you went to it. It looked great. And then asking if they would be open to connecting to discuss something more business-minded. So yeah, networking is a crazy thing, but I think you will find throughout your life in all stages, and I think you guys are certainly better at your age at doing this than I ever was, so kudos off the bat for you guys. you'll just find that networking fills into every single part of your life, both personal and professional. And it really is worth it to push yourself beyond your comfort levels and really make an effort to make those connections, because at the end of the day, it could turn into something really exciting and substantial, both for you and the person that you're connecting with. So I'm going to stop talking there and give some time for you guys to ask some questions.
That was amazing advice, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we have a few questions. Laura asks, do you have any like go-to phrases when you're first approaching somebody to start a conversation?
Yeah. So you guys might be there already, but I'm at a point in my career where I'm going to conferences and people have those name tags, and you have to look awkwardly at everybody's name tags and pretend like you didn't know they were going to be there in advance. And so usually I'll just go up to somebody, and if it's someone I know I wanted to connect with in advance, I usually have in my mind a reason why I wanted to connect with them. So I'll just simply go up to them and say, hey, I saw you work for XYZ company. It's really interesting. I've seen some of the great work that you do with, XYZ nonprofit. Would love to just chat with you more about that and hear more about that. Typically, I try to get the other person to talk more first. I think you'll find people naturally really like talking about themselves and about their organizations and about the things that they care about. So I generally try to take the approach of, how do I get them talking about what they're excited about, and then let the conversation flow a little bit more naturally.
So do you find it more challenging, because you go to conferences? Diana asked, do you find it more challenging to network in person rather than social media? What do you find is more beneficial?
I am of the age where we didn't have all of these fantastic social media tools when I was earlier on in my career. So I would say like things like LinkedIn, I definitely have started using more. I don't necessarily network through LinkedIn. I do more of connecting through LinkedIn and then ask for either a call or an in-person meeting. Just because I find that in-person meetings and that face-to-face contact, just like we're all doing tonight, really lets you have that additional kind of human touch, right? I think a lot of things unfortunately get lost during social media or through social media, though it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. But I think being in front of somebody and showing them who you are and really being able to make that human connection is super important if you're able to. Of course, understanding that things like time and distance sometimes makes that a challenge.
So another question I had was, how do you use social media to your advantage? Like, you talked about how it is a cool tool now. What are some tips of after you connect with someone on LinkedIn? Like, what do you chat? What do you talk to them about?
Yeah, I think with a LinkedIn connection, LinkedIn is really amazing when it comes to using it professionally, and we're able to see various degrees of connections. I would say a really great tool for networking I've found on LinkedIn is that a lot of people use the newsfeed to post interesting articles and to interact with one another. And that can be a really great springboard for trying to reach out to a cold contact if you see that they've posted an article recently, and that can be a jumping off point for engaging with that person. Hey, I saw you posted this great article on your LinkedIn page about the Sustainable Development Goals. Would love to chat with you a little bit about what UNICEF's doing around the SDGs. Usually I'll use those types of things as a springboard. So LinkedIn, I would say, is my primary vehicle on what we would call social media for networking.
Awesome, thank you. Anna asks, how can you tell when someone is disinterested, and should we try to change that, or should we move on?
I think generally speaking, looking for that first response is great. And if you don't get that first response, maybe giving it a little bit of time, maybe a week or 2 weeks, and then following up with an additional piece that's maybe new to the conversation. So I'll bring to my perspective, from working with corporations, I'll send an initial email and I'll say, hey, this is the great work UNICEF is doing. Seems like this is the great work that your company is doing. Would love to talk about ways that we can, explore our similarities and see if we can work together. If I don't get an answer from that initial email, I'll usually give it a week or two and try to see if there's an additional point of contact or context that I can bring into the conversation. So for instance, if I know that that company is really focused on disaster response efforts, which is something that UNICEF really excels at, I'll, for instance, reach back out and say, hey, I don't know if you've seen the response to, for instance, this cyclone that recently happened. Just wanted to share with you what we're doing with some of our partners as an example. So I think bringing in that additional perhaps new element into a follow-up email is great. And then I would say generally after a second email, if they aren't responsive, I would say for personal networking, maybe just give it a break and don't push on it. I would say when it comes to business rules, sometimes we'll try to find a new connection at that company to reach out if somebody has been unresponsive. But I would say personal and professional tend to be a little different in terms of the outreach and follow-up space.
So on the topic of difficulty when connecting to people, Diana asks, do you find it difficult to network with foreign partners due to language or cultural differences? If so, how do you overcome these obstacles?
Sure. So in this current role I'm in, and at UNICEF USA, we're only outreaching to US corporations. So that's a little bit less of a challenge for us. However, we are constantly working with our colleagues who are working in other countries, whether it be China or, whom else have I been talking to recently? It's really fun. We get to talk to colleagues all over the world, Italy, France. I would say we're very lucky in that English often is a language that many people know. So it really makes it easier for us, to be honest. But I think the thing I'm always thinking of is what is the language barrier or hurdle to overcome for them? How can I make sure that I'm being most accommodating to them having to speak in English? And what are the best ways for us to communicate? So some of those communications tend to be a little bit tricky at first until I've figured out, okay, this person prefers things in writing, or they prefer a phone call, or maybe us sending emails back and forth because there is a slight language barrier is actually not allowing us to communicate properly. So I think always when it comes to those types of things, seeing if maybe somebody would prefer to speak on the phone versus email, giving them that option. I think also Skype calls or Google Hangouts so that you can see each other. We do a lot of Skype at UNICEF and a lot of similar types of formats. So I think having that in-person interaction, again, really helps with some of those barriers.
Great, thank you. Stephen asked, do you usually go into a potential networking situation with a specific goal in mind?
Yes. So I try to outline, and again, slightly different from personal versus professional, but I try to outline in my mind, not sharing with them like an agenda, but my own internal agenda, right? And I actually write out what my agenda is before I go into these meetings and what I see as the opportunities for collaboration or partnership, so that I always have a running agenda in my mind to make sure that I'm hitting upon the things that I see as opportunities. But then I always try to have a first conversation as more exploratory and natural, which is why I don't tend to give an agenda up front. But you'll see different people do things differently. That's simply my style. Other people really prefer having an agenda if they know that the purpose of the meeting is very specific. So I think you'll see it different in a lot of different ways.
Well, thank you, Ms. Sarah, again for all the information that you've bestowed upon
You're
us. And thank you
welcome.
for answering our questions. It was really insightful, and I hope to hear from you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for all that you guys do. We're really super excited about all of our young champions at UNICEF who will hopefully be lifelong champions for UNICEF. So thank you.
Thank you. So if you guys have any more questions for Ms. Sarah, If you want to email us at council@unicefclubs.org, or you can chat in our Slack channel. If you haven't joined yet, I'm just about to send a little link of everything, and you can join our Slack channel, and then you can send those questions in, or you can just email us at council@unicefclubs.org. So I'm just going to share, I think Caitlin and I are going to quickly share a bit of how you can use networking in your clubs and what advantages networking has as a UNICEF USA club member. So for me, networking has helped me specifically with fundraising for UNICEF clubs in my school. So this year for Trick or Treat for UNICEF, we had a bit of a setback because it was raining, and we were like, how do we fundraise even more? So we connected with our key club president, and through networks of friends, through different all of our club leaders were friends with other people. So we talked through those networks of friends, we connected, we scheduled a little library meeting, and we talked about partnering with them for a fundraiser. And as our key club and UNICEF clubs came together, we actually sold carnations for Valentine's Day and raised around $600 for kids all across the country for UNICEF USA. So that's how you can use your networking in your clubs. Take the skills that you've learned today and talk to kids in your school. Caitlin, do you have any tips?
Yeah, similar to what you're talking about. I go to Iowa State University, and it is a large campus. There's a huge student population, and it's very difficult because there are so many clubs to have big events. So networking is so important, whether it is networking at club fairs directly student to student, or networking with your student body council or other clubs, just so that you can make those partnerships and then have combined events, and that way you can have a bigger population, bigger outcome. I found that was the most successful way to go about planning things on a large campus, especially. So that's one way that we have use networking to our advantage on campus. I'd say another benefit we've had is networking with your community. Make sure that you go to business owners, small business owners love to have typically a school club that they like to sponsor. So that's one great way to make connections around your community and have community events as well. So yeah.
So if you want to connect with clubs even in your local area to see if you can make a new event or you can do something together, you can see where clubs are at. And we actually have a map that shows where each club is across the country. So I'm going to send that little link onto the chat box. So if you go to our website and you scroll down on the first page, you'll see a huge Google Maps showing clubs all across the country. They have their email and they have contact information for all the clubs. Contact them, reach out to them, see how you can connect with them and how you can work towards building a better network, and you can create events. Even if it isn't in your local area, if you want to connect with clubs across the country, do it. Reach out to them and you can see how you can do cross-country collaboration. You never know. Networking gives a lot of opportunities. So yeah, thank you guys for joining today. That's our little spiel on networking, and hopefully you'll take all these lessons that you've learned and apply it back at your club and apply it in your personal life.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining. And I hope that you guys learned something, because I know I did. I'll take these skills back with me.
And remember to fill out the end of the year survey. You'll get, again, Scion Blue cords that you can rock at your graduation. You can show to all your friends how cool you are and how you are a true UNICEF Uniter. So I'm going to send that link again. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to council@unicefclubs.org. Network with us. Let's have a conversation. So bye, guys.
Great. Thank you.